Hello, hello.
Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Go Big with Micha. Today, I am super excited to have Nathalie Van Haaren with me. She is talking about a very, very important topic: how to recover confidently from burnout. Hopefully, also to give us some tips how to prevent burnout in the first place. But
Yeah.
many of us have been there already. So I'm very excited to talk about this important topic. But let me tell you a little bit about Nathalie before we dive in. Nathalie is the owner and founder of NPOWER, and there is a link to her website in the event, so you can check that there. And she is a leadership and business coach these days, working with women who are highly educated, ambitious, and really high achievers. And despite that, feel stuck and not fulfilled by the work they do. She knows that because she used to be a high potential in the corporate world and had several years of success as an IT change consultant and service designer, and then experienced a burnout. So that's when her take on success and what success means for her and in life changed. And eventually, she quit first to become a freelance consultant, and after a year, uh, went into coaching. So we are very glad to have her in that space now because she's an amazing coach. Nathalie and we met through Tara Quest,
Yeah.
which is a metaverse coaching experience. So if you have not checked that out yet, always ping me and ask me. I'll be happy to send you the link and the information where to look it up. That is a leadership training for women in the metaverse, and we are on the coaching team there. Okay, so that's enough from my side for that. Welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you. Thank you, Micha, for the beautiful introduction as well. And for
Uh,
having me. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Very happy to have you. So, before we talk about how to recover and maybe prevent, hopefully also prevent burnout, uh, would you share with me, with our audience? And when I say audience, I forgot to say, people, if you see this live, feel free to put questions in the chat. I should be able to see them. I can put them up on the screen, and then we can talk about your questions too. If you see the replay, then feel free to reach out. You have both of our contact information in the show notes, wherever you. That's definitely with the video. Okay, but now, so before we talk about why that, no, let's talk about why that became your niche, your focus in coaching. So I assume you had a serious burnout.
Yeah, but it took me a long time to accept that. So I think that's already a little bit of the first revelation that happens the moment, because when we think easily defined burnout is just extended
Yeah.
periods of stress, both emotionally and physically, so much that either or is just completely out of balance, right? So for me, the first step was in fact like accepting that my body and my mind were not functioning at optimal level anymore. And that took a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, because I had a lot of conditioning as a woman
Yeah.
that I had to get my things together, and I had to be strong and to show up powerfully at work, and I was confident, and this doesn't happen to confident people. So this was like 4 or 5 years ago, and I think
Mm-hmm.
right now, wellness and mental health, also inside of organizations and big organizations, is much more discussed openly and
Yeah.
brought
Yeah.
in. But back then,
That's a very, very important trend. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
For sure.
back then I felt very lonely. I remember, because I
Mm-hmm.
was working in IT, so a very male dominated industry.
Yeah.
And this was not something that I easily spoke about, and also felt a lot of shame around. in the beginning.
I mean that really that resonates with me, and I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people who will watch this. I always say the worst four-letter word as I grew up in my family, the worst four-letter word was lazy.
Mm.
Lazy was like the worst thing you could ever say about a person. And there is, and it sounds like you had certain conditioning that also, while probably being different, led you into that, all right, I always have to excel at work, and I have to take every challenge, and I have to uh outperform everybody. If you're not best 5%, that's not good enough. All of
Yeah,
these
it's
things.
a
And
lot of the type A, like high achieving mindset that
yeah,
uh, you've been conditioned with throughout life. I think it's also partly generational, partly societal, but it's also,
right.
like you said, what are the internalized stories that you've told yourself about work? And maybe for you that was
Yeah.
being lazy. Like for me was that, given my family background, it was more like you are strong, so you
Mm-hmm.
just power through.
Yeah.
um yeah, it took a while for first to accept that. And well, at one point it made it very easy, because your body is just like, you know what, we're done, and we're
Yeah.
just gonna give you, in my case it was a lot of memory loss, and just
Okay.
physical
Yeah.
exhaustion. Then I was like
Yeah.
my cognitive abilities just completely like vanished, like simple math equations. I couldn't do that anymore.
That must have
And
been scary. I mean, especially memory loss, like in your 20s, you're just freaking out, right? I mean, that shouldn't be a thing, and or being able to do simple math. That must have been so scary.
I mean, that's when I started noticing, like, okay, there
Mm.
is something that I need to pay attention to.
Yeah,
And I think my real personal development journey started in that moment. Like, I think up till
yeah.
then, I've always been part of like leadership trainings, or this like high talent group trainings inside of organizations
Mm-hmm.
they have, where they're focused a lot on like improving your skills and the way that you work. But like the deep
Yeah,
work on that is sometimes that is done with coaching, that really wasn't addressed, or I felt safe to discuss. I
right,
think,
right.
for example, imposter syndrome, I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
I had that until I was like 27, that I started reading about it, and I'm like, oh, I am
Yeah,
not alone in this. This is a thing. Because I
yeah,
always keep thoughts to myself.
yeah. I mean, I was way older when I learned these things, so kudos to you that you picked them up early. So you realized in that moment, when your bodies have that tendency that they send us really scary signals, whatever they are, um, when it's really, when there's no last exit before burnout anymore. So that's basically where you went. And so what was the exit you took then? How did that happen for you? How did you make your recovery and regain your confidence? Because I guess that was really in shatters probably at that point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Um, I decided to get help.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was one of the key things that I was like, okay,
Yeah,
this one, I know I got myself to this position, so I know I can get myself out of this position. I think that was a very
yeah,
powerful thought already.
that is
But
a
let
good thought. Yeah.
let me find the right help for me. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that looks different for every single person. So I worked with the company psychologist for a bit, but that didn't really have the results that I wanted. So I tried different things, right? So I learned to listen to my body. So I started enrolling in mindfulness. That was the first time that I started practicing that. So, just a
Yeah.
basic concept that I am not my thoughts. That was like a revelation for me
Yeah.
back.
I am not my thoughts, or
Yeah.
my version of that is I don't have to believe my thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Also,
amazing, right?
it's
When you
so
when you
great.
really learn that, it's like, whoa, yeah.
So through these different kind of practices, so mindfulness was one, breath work started to being another one. My yoga practice picked up a
Mm.
lot. And it was also a way for my body to calm down, right? So if your body is exposed to high periods of stress, it needs to go back to homeostasis. And
Yeah.
you only do that by in your way seeing what feels good in my body. So it's also your personal experience of being like, okay, do I actually want to walk or do I want to swim? Like, and just listening to the intelligence that your body is really giving to you. And that was also like a complete thing that I was like, of all the things that I learned so far, like nobody taught me how to do these kind of things and learn these kind of skills. So that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
big part as well.
Mm. I mean, for me,
Um,
what I found difficult when I started to work on all these things, that I had a very, and I think that resonates with a lot of high achievers. I'm like, the slow stuff doesn't interest me. That makes me more nervous. So, which is not true, just need to find my angle. But I remember I used to say like boxing is my yoga, because then I work out so hard that I'm so exhausted that I can't think anymore. That's not very helpful, I
yeah.
guess.
So that's how we take, and this is going more into the emotional part, right? Like, so this is one body, but if your mind is driving the same thoughts in terms of how you need to take care of your body, as in I need to push it because then I'm tired
Yeah.
and then I don't think, right? That's an interesting place to become really curious and
Mm.
ask yourself, like, where is this narrative coming from that I need to push, and what are the qualities that I get to develop as a leader? Because this is really about self leadership, about
Yeah.
speaking kindly to myself, about being my own
Yeah.
best cheerleader, about
Yeah.
in some parts also like reparenting ourselves, to be like, whoa, why are you speaking so harshly?
Yeah.
And do you have
Yeah.
to do all these things?
Do you have to
So
do all the things? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Erin. Yeah, listening to our bodies is so powerful, but most of us don't learn that. I mean, most of us learn to master body and emotions, right? I mean, so that we can perform at this high level. And
yeah.
you have found a way uh, to perform at a very high level. I mean, I've seen you coach. You're very, very good at what you do, so you still perform at this very high level, but in a different way. Can you explain a little bit how things shifted for you? Where they shifted?
Yeah. Um, so for me, both privately and professionally, I started creating a different kind of sort of philosophy where I said, like, okay, from now on, my body is going to be part of my intelligence as a human being. That's one. The second, like, I have the capabilities to train my mind, right? Because also
Mm.
what we do a lot with coaching is like the best gift that you can have is a managed mind. Something that my
Right.
own coach said. It's like it's going to
Absolutely.
make
Yep.
life so much easier. So using your body's intelligence, managing your mind in your day to day, and then there is a very strong aspect that some people may call intuition or spirituality, or what is my purpose on this planet, and how can you weave the intelligence of those three. And I
Mm.
think when you start pulling and integrating, and also tapping into the wisdom of those, you create a completely different way of leading. Um,
Yeah.
so, because that's a lot of my work that I do with women. It's not leadership. How do you lead others? But it's like, how do I lead myself first? And you will become natural example towards others in the way that
Yep.
you lead
Which
yourself.
reminds me of what my dog trainer told me in the very beginning. It's like, I'm training you, not the dog. So I'm
Yeah,
training you to be consistent. The dog will follow. That's fine. Um, it's the same system, right? I have to
yeah,
I have to be a confident, competent self leader
yeah.
to be leading others well. Yeah. So now a lot of women in corporate have that huge issue that they encourage others to do these helpful things, but they don't do it themselves because, of course, for themselves, they see, okay, these are the promotion requirements, these are the things going on. is there a way to really combine this lifestyle, this mindful lifestyle that prevents burnout, with successful corporate careers, or do you have to step back from certain ambitions?
I think this is a very spot on question. This is such a good question that I think we could do like a whole other, live around how are we
Yeah, I
designing the
bet.
organization for the future.
Yeah,
And I think that will depend per person, right? Like, so for me, my choice was I came in my early 20s of like, I want to change the system and I want to be a female leader inside of corporations. Um, and when I started peeling those layers, I was like, okay, but is that really is it my thing, or is that something that I'm telling myself? And for me, it was something that I was telling myself. My
yeah,
my passion and my purpose is outside of the corporations. Um, However, I still work with corporations, and there's still women in there, and I
right,
think
right.
that and men, women and men. It's not like that one is more important than the other. And I do think that women can set a completely different example of leading, and we're starting to see that inside of society, inside of politics, inside of like parental leaves, where the man is starting to get as much as, in some countries, as much as the women.
Yeah.
There are some companies that are implementing PMS days, like including the
Mhm.
hormonal cycles of women
Yeah,
inside of corporations and working days, and I think that is amazing. And for some people, that's going to be like, that's not efficient. And that's exactly the kind of discussion that I think that is
yeah,
very much needed.
yeah, absolutely. And I think what I find interesting is like with the PMS days, we definitely hear and see both sides, also from women to say this is great or this feels stigmatizing. Suddenly
Mhm,
it's really about, oh, she's having her period.
mhm.
That so there are a lot of complexities around these topics, but I think it's really interesting that we are having these conversations, and uh, we won't get it right the first time. I mean that is what we've seen with the parental leaves too, right? Um, and of course, I'm located in the U.S., which is the only developed country, first world country, the only people, seriously, if you didn't know that, that does not offer any kind of mandatory uh, maternal, paternal, any kind of leave in connection with having a baby. So uh, that's a disaster, of course.
And
And so corporations have to do a lot. But what can you do when your employer, your corporation, is not that helpful? I mean, if you're already very stressed out, you probably don't have the capacity to change the system.
no, and that's definitely not the order in which I would do things, right? Like,
Yeah,
this is coming back in with a lot of balance and a lot of force, if you want to start managing the conversations that need to happen inside of organizations. I think if you're recovering from your burnout or even coming back into it, first of all, it doesn't mean that you learn it the first time around, like all
yeah,
of your
yeah,
lessons, because
yeah,
there are a lot of patterns that you've been stuck with for however long in your working career. So, and that showed for me as well. So I actually left corporate. I started my own practice after freelancing for a bit, and then I saw some of the same kind of thinking popping up in my business, which started making me work longer than I
yeah.
wanted to, because I thought I should.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so giving yourself the time to um, one, like, connect with other people who've had this experience. I think that's quite an
Yeah,
opportunity. Connecting with people outside of your organization, because
yeah,
I think when you're inside of corporations and inside the way that one company does everything, it's so hard for our brains to be like, okay, there's more to this world, and I am
yeah,
not the only one.
yeah. Especially
Um,
if you've been there for a bit, right? I
yeah,
mean, when we talk to, I'm sure that's the same for you. When I talk to women, in my case, that have been with an organization for over 5 years. I mean, of course, you know how your organization works, and you're very caught up in that. So that's
Yeah.
the first thing, right? Yeah, find your allies, find your support system, or an additional support system. You might have it at work, outside of work. Um, Before we move on, I wanted to just go to this comment we have from Cindy. No, I can't read the whole thing. Sorry. I'll read it first. It's interesting how much easier it is to give men equity to women, parental leave, than it is to give women and non-binary folks equity in so many other areas. Cindy, yes. Oh my God. Yeah. It goes on and on. Of course, parental leave helps everyone, but it does seem the argument that it will level the playing field for men makes it easier to implement. Yeah, that structural inequity is still so hard, and it feels, I think, for many women and non-binary folks, the challenge is so overwhelming in itself, right? When you are in that position.
I wouldn't know in this case. The only thing, and thank you for bringing this up, Cindy, because I think this is super important. Is to start whenever we feel this, is to start looking for ways in which it is possible, and sometimes for countries who are already leading in this field, right? So I don't know where you're based from, but I'm
Cindy's in the
guessing.
US too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
What that reminds me of this, yeah, it's so much easier to give men the equity when that reminds me, I recently had to start mammograms. I'm that age, and it is not a pleasant experience, a mammogram. And I was just like talking to the technical person who ran the machine. I'm like, I am totally sure if men had to get mammograms, it would be a totally different system by now. There would have been a lot more research done to get a better system in place that's not as unpleasant. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of a thing that you see mirrored in the business world.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of room for improvement, but and also I think just allowing the systems to and change to take its course. Like, it's going to take time, and we are on the right way. Like, this again is from which angle do we decide to look at it? Because like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was no way that we were having these kind of conversations.
It's true.
Right? Just as we're now talking openly about burnout, there was no way that people were talking about it.
Yeah. Or menopause. It's very interesting, those conversations that we're having. And I remember my personal, probably close to burnout experience was when I had really a month in which I only worked, slept, ate, and went back and forth to the office. That was really literally everything I did for about 30 days. And then I started crying a lot. I mean, that is something my body does, because I'm very uncomfortable with crying. I guess that's a bit of a stereotypical German thing. But your body has to come up with something radical
to let you
to
know,
make you realize. Yeah. So what would you say in very practical steps, tangible steps, if a woman or anybody really is at that point where they are getting those very strong signals that something is not working? Where do you start?
So I want to say is start listening to your body. And if that's hard, if you feel that there's resistance, and it's like, oh, like I'm crying, why am I crying? Like, stop crying. If you notice that, then tell someone.
Yeah.
Tell someone you trust that you're not doing okay. And that kind of removes the first like barrier of being like, okay, I need to just figure this out all alone, because that's not the case. So start pulling in your resources. Can you tell somebody you trust what's going on with you? And I would, depending of course where, like how badly your body and your mental health is out of whack, is you need to start with your body. Like that's first. Like our brains are not really smart. Our bodies are smarter. So
Yeah.
it's taking care of the body first. So that means sleep. It means regular sleep. It means regular exercise. It means, are you drinking enough? It means how many coffees are you
Water.
drinking a day? Yeah.
Water.
I remember when I was back in Europe, I was drinking like five, and I am originally a Dutch Ecuadorian, but was working in Amsterdam, and we had these coffee machines, and I would drink 5 to 6 coffees a day, like in my 20s. I thought that was
Easily.
completely normal.
Yeah.
Right. So taking care of the basics first, and if that's hard because you have all these rules about how work should be, that's when you start getting in some support and from a mental level, like to
Yeah.
change some of the thoughts that you have around work.
I have another comment here from Cindy that really resonates with me. Perimenopause is so disruptive and makes burnout so much worse. Memory loss, mood swings, and less willingness to put up with the patriarchy. That for sure. Amen. Um, and it definitely really feeds into each other in this really, it can feed into each other with that vicious cycle. But I'm wondering if what the stigma what the stigma is when you burn out very young, because I feel there's a lot of, you mentioned shame earlier, and it's kind of
Mm.
like the lowest vibration feeling ever, right? So um, I I feel like there's a lot of stigma around being young and being, and then it's like privileged, entitled when these
Oh,
things happen. So there's this entire that package. So as someone who was in that situation as a young woman, how did that how did you navigate that extra
mm,
layer?
in the beginning, I didn't, right? Because, like I said, I kept it to myself. So that's
Yeah,
why,
yeah.
when you notice that, my first advice is start talking to people who you trust or have gone through something similar, because what they can
Mm,
do for you very quickly is normalize what you are experiencing. Because your brain is giving you all these thoughts like, this is not normal, this is not normal, like what's happening?
yeah.
It's almost like spinning out a bit. So that was the first part, and connecting with like-minded women and people. And with regards to the shame is really one of, oof, it's one of those emotions that, like, as Brene Brown says, oh no, we need to be willing to experience vulnerability, and your brain goes, hell no, like that's never
Nope,
gonna happen.
nope. Yeah,
And I think she's useful in bringing up this discussion. I think where
yeah.
we lack a lot of the tools is then how do we deal with needing to feel shame? Because do we
Hmm.
allow ourselves to feel
Yeah,
shame? And we, like, I had no idea how to feel my emotions in the first place, because there's a difference between intentionally feeling how you feel, right, and your
yeah,
body just like crying or like becoming small or big, um, uh, because you're really not aware of what it is that
yeah.
you're consciously experiencing.
Do you
um,
sorry, let me ask one question between that. That's just purely because I am so curious about that. I totally, that resonates with me. Do you think that is the type of yeah, Dutch, German, Central European culture that doesn't really encourage anybody to really feel and express their emotions? Uh, or is that a general thing? People are just, many people, always many, not everybody, are out of touch in the modern world.
I think culture plays a small part.
Hmm?
Um, because now I'm speaking from like my South American side, my Dutch side, and I
Yeah,
live in
yeah,
Africa.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what I notice is that people have not been taught how to deal with their emotions.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
do that with our kids already, you know, like the moment that they like build up a tantrum or like, like, don't be so annoying, or just like act normal, or like be quiet. Instead of finding and teaching our kids a way, and I don't have children, but to how can you coach them almost like through their
Yeah.
emotions. And
Yeah.
I think now we're starting to create more awareness around it, become more conscious around it. So it's really going to come with generations, and also the time period that we're in right now. It's seeing also the focus on mental health, that's going to start changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually, I am so excited to learn from people like you who are a generation younger than I am, because there's so much going on right now where I feel, oh my God, we all had to, my generation, everybody was kind of like over 40 when they learned these things. And I think I was 40 when I trained as a coach. But yeah, but a lot of these things, I mean, I learned since then, and nobody talked about a lot of these things. And so I think that is an enormous shift that we are seeing. And I'm really glad to see people modeling it so well. You including. Thank you for sharing the story. And I would like to hear a little more on how you work with people and who you work with.
Yeah. So I work with women. And people are like, oh, but why only women? I'm like, because I started doing the things that I love. And I
Mm-hmm.
love working with women. I've worked with men as well, but so women inside of corporations or organizations, it doesn't really matter, but who are ready to change their way of leading themselves. And self leadership includes, if you come to me, it includes your mind, it includes your body, and it includes your soul. So you can expect
Mm-hmm.
a holistic coaching experience, which is what I personally lacked a bit when I was introduced to this world, because it is usually
Yep.
either or only your mind, or only your body, or only your intuition. And if you want that as a whole, I'm your person.
Yep. Yep. That sounds so good. So people, there is a link to hop on a call with Nathalie in the show notes, and I would encourage you to do that. You see, she's a wonderful source of information, a wonderful person. So just continue the conversation with her as you go forward. And I read in your biography, so I'm switching from my usual last question here. I want to ask yours, because in the bio Nathalie provided me with, it says, I lead my life with the question, when was the last time I did something for the first time? Fabulous question. And I immediately was like, okay, last year I started snowshoeing, and then in the summer I went camping. Okay, that's months ago. So I started to think about it. I love that question. What is your thing?
The last thing I did was I bought I bought an adventure book for me and my partner,
Yeah.
where for every date that we do, we need to scratch, and it's a date that, we don't know what it is. It just says how much time, if there is is there the money investment, and if we need to like buy things in advance. So like I was like, okay, because adventure is one of my core values. So it's like, this is like, sounds like the
Yeah.
so that was the first time that I bought that.
That sounds like so much fun. So have you done an adventure already?
We have one scheduled this weekend, but I know there's one where you need to drive your car to like a nice scenic spot and have downloaded a movie on your laptop and bring your own snacks. That's one.
Oh, that's a nice one. I mean, maybe not. Oh, yeah, you're in South Africa, so your weather is fine. You can do that. You
Yeah,
can
we're
do that right now. Here in
oh.
Seattle, that would not appeal to me right now. That would be a little cold and wet. Yeah, but that sounds like a fun idea. So, uh, reintroducing like even if it's kind of microdosed joy, fun, community back into your life, is that something you work on with people as well? Is that an important aspect?
Yeah. Yeah. And community is becoming more and more important because I've been only working with women one on one. Like that
Mm.
was my only offer because I love going in depth. And I started seeing these patterns that women have. And I was like, oh, they all should know about each other because, then they'll
Mm-hmm.
feel less alone because it makes me feel less alone. Right. Because
Yeah.
I know that they have all of these emotions and similar experiences sometimes. So I started combining my work inside of groups,
Mm-hmm.
and that is just something else. And I started last year. I'm beginning with a group this year as well, and they're women from different industries. They're women from different countries and different cultures, a little bit like Tara. And we do that holistic coaching, and then inside of a group setting. And they've said like it's even better than therapy.
Yes, well, we'll leave at that note. That's a great last sentence here. Nathalie, thank you so much for being here, sharing information, sharing your story. That even more than anything else. And people, please, I'll say it one more time, reach out to Nathalie if you want to talk more about this. She can talk about this for a lot longer than we have here. Thank you, Nathalie, and everybody. We'll be back next week. But until then, have a great rest of your week. See you soon. Bye bye.